and welcome. Today we will be conducting a demonstration of the Cyware Intelligence Suite capabilities. Let's begin. Beginning with the built-in Cyware Sandbox. Cyware's Sandbox provides a secure and isolated environment where you can safely execute any suspicious file or URL and uncover malware behavior without risking your actual live systems. Cyware Sandbox is integrated directly into Cyware Intel Exchange and Collaborate. It currently supports two capabilities, Scan and Sandbox. Starting with Scan, it allows you to perform a quick scan of a file or a URL, and you get an immediate threat verdict. If we have a look over here, you can either enter a URL or you can browse for a file, and you can submit a scan request. The bottom table gives a comprehensive list of all the scans initiated till date. This is the one that was initiated just now and others that were initiated in the past. The table shows the status of the scan, the type of the scan ID, hashes, and who was the submitter. Along with this, you can also download the scan report. You can also view it. You get a summary like 0 out of 9 engines reported this artifact or file to be malicious. Along with that, you get a list of file metadata, which are attributes of the artifact, when it was first seen, the MIME type, and what are the associated hashes. Along with this, you also have an option to submit this file directly to Sandbox. Moving on to Sandbox, it allows you to again submit either a URL or a file, but for deeper behavioral analysis. It records detailed activity and produces a comprehensive report which can be viewed anytime. This is again a list of all the previously triggered Sandbox requests. You can delete them, download the report, or view the report. For this artifact, the Sandbox provider gave a verdict of benign. It was sandboxed on a certain date by Shashi. You also get details of the IOCs and a deeper analysis report, which includes what were the network IPs that were hit, the MITRE-TDP data, and what are the behavioral signatures. Now, if a file is selected and a Sandbox request is triggered, Sandbox asks which provider you would like to trigger Sandboxing. You can select either Keep Triage or you can select both. You can also select the configuration of the Sandbox environment. The environment supports 3 multiple configurations. You can also select whether the Sandbox environment should have access to the internet and submit your request. Since both Sandbox providers were selected, 2 Sandbox requests are triggered and are currently in progress. Moving on to the built-in Exposure Management module. Cyware Exposure Management is a one-stop shop for identifying and taking actions anywhere your organization might be exposed on the open and dark web. You can observe all of the breaches and credentials that are impacted within your environment in this module. Right now on the dashboard, you can see multiple different insights. These trends will talk about the accounts within your identity management, which are at risk, not at risk, what are the breach trends, etc. To get started, you go into the settings, set up the domains you want to monitor. Set up your default IAM app. Set up your response actions where you can pick out playbooks from your Cyware Orchestrate instance and use these to perform actioning quickly. Set up automated responses for your VIPs. You can input the VIP list in a CSV format and set up what actions would be automatically performed if any of your VIPs are compromised. Moving to the listing, we can see all compromised credentials listed in this tab. When any one of these is opened up, you can see a timeline with different dates of the breaches being seen and the breach data. If you want to mark any of these as a true positive or a false positive, you can just move this here. Further, if you want to reset the password and notify the user, you can simply click on the actions here and the action takes place. The user's password will be reset and they will be notified. Moving on to an interesting feature of the Exposure Management module, Domain Sightings. What Domain Sightings does is that if there is any chatter about your domain on the dark web, Cyware Exposure Management goes there, crawls the dark web, picks out a screenshot of it, and presents it to you so that you as a firm, you can take relevant actions accordingly. An example was discovered on May 10 and the domain being looked at is test.com. The screenshot shows test.com has been mentioned on a dark web forum. The entire idea is for companies to know if there is any chatter around their domain on the dark web and try to get that information in the Exposure Management module.
Finally, let's take a look at the Cyware Attack Surface Intelligence within the Cyware Intel Suite. To begin this process, select the main menu, go to this particular threat data listing page, and this will bring you here. All you need to do is search for Attack Surface Intelligence. Now, all of these are actually available as individual reports per asset. So you can actually go ahead and filter by the report object type, and you will be able to see all of these. Right now, let's talk about one of these today. I'll pick one of these randomly. The moment you jump into the details page, you will be able to see a couple of things. First and foremost, there would be a lot of relations that you would be able to see. All of these are actually TTPs, malwares, etc., that are found to be related to this particular asset, which is available on this particular IP address. Plus, other than that, you will also be able to see the user tags over here. Now, these are very, very interesting as well because they first allow you quick context and will also allow you filtering and pivoting on the platform itself later on. But you can see, right off the bat, that this particular asset is a compromised asset. It is targeted by a threat actor. It is an infected, high-risk, vulnerable asset. So the tags themselves directly tell you what kind of data to expect within this particular report itself. Now, in order to view the report, let's actually go to the analysis page. Here, you would be able to see the actual data that came through. Now, if I click on Read More, here you would be able to see first, starting from the asset overview. Where is this asset located? Are there any other known IP addresses for it? Host names that are known for this? Does it have a malicious reputation? Contributing factors for that reputation, network and hosting context, where it is actually located in the world, the geolocations, if it's cloud, if it's hosted on a specific cloud, what is the cloud provider, and what's the region? More importantly, it also tells you different organizations and domains that are attributed to this particular asset and IP address. And you can see over here, first you get the name of that particular organization, the domain that belongs to that organization, the industry of that organization, and then a score. For example, let's say if you as a person are working with one of these organizations, it tells you that this is probably not something that you want to take a deeper look at because this is not really 100% secure. It has known issues available on the internet. And that is actually one of the strengths of this particular data set because it allows you to filter and look for intel based on your third-party suppliers as well. Now, going on further, you will be able to see the vulnerability exposure as well. Now, these are the vulnerabilities that were observed on this IP address during scanning and analysis. So you can see the vulnerability, you can see what was the score, when was it first seen and last seen, the associated port. That is where the product or a service which is vulnerable will actually be listed as well. Any associated threat actors that you may be seeing that are known to exploit this particular vulnerability. So you would be able to get all of that information as well. And as you can see, this is indeed vulnerable to so many different CVEs. Now, what are the associated threat actors? Now, a lot of these threat actors would actually be coming from these vulnerabilities that are listed over here. But some of them would also be based on the infections that are found on this particular asset. We'll take a look at that in a second. So you would be able to see the threat actors, the name of the threat actor, origin, their origin country. The link tells you how it is actually related to this asset. Because this is an indirect relation, you can see that these are threat actors that are known to have exploited the vulnerabilities or the malware activities that were actually observed on this particular IP address. And that's where you would be able to see if it's linked through a CVE or is it actually linked through a malware. You will be able to see all of that. Now, if you go down, you will further be able to see if there are any associated ransomwares. What was the victim's domain? This is again very important because these are ransomwares associated to affect the organizations that are listed to be or attributed to this particular asset. So that's why it's very important in that sense. Known breaches. This can be very interesting if this asset was actually correlated or known to be associated with a known breach. Then you would be able to see that over here as well. Then further, you have active threat activity. This is where you will be able to see the active infections on this particular asset. You will be able to see the infection type, which is generic malware, or a potentially vulnerable application. You will be able to see what port it can be reached on. And then you can see the categories as well. Now, sensor observations are also interesting because here you will be able to see if it was seen to be connecting to a honeypot or any other service or any other sensor. And then finally, you have the network exposure and services, which lists down all the open ports. It lists down all the services that are running on those ports, the products that are running on the source, and also the operating system if identified. So you will be able to see all of that over here. But it doesn't end here. As a platform, Cyware believes in making sure all of these things are something which is more actionable. And instead of just being a text dump somewhere in the platform. And if you proceed to the Relations tab over here, you will be able to visualize this entire thing. You can click on this visualizer, and it is going to give you a very interesting view of this entire report itself. So you can see there are many objects being related. But, of course, I may want to analyze it one by one. So I can just click on the type of object that I want and I can see that. So you can look at any one of these and go from there. But another interesting thing that you can do from here is actually go into threat investigations. And the moment you do, the same visualizer will be open in the threat investigation canvas over here. Now, this will allow you to again visualize and pivot from here to different objects, understand your attack surface, understand different correlations for this particular asset. But more importantly, you will be able to pivot and correlate it with other traditional threat intel. Now, what does that mean? So, for example, I know that there are many malwares which are associated with this one. So what I can do is I can select any one of these malwares and try and see if that is something associated or available already within the platform. Or I can do that for a threat actor, I can do that for a vulnerability, etc. I can simply go ahead, right-click, Analyze Relations, and I can select what kind of data that I want from here. The moment I do, the platform goes back to itself and populates everything. And this is really interesting because right now what we're doing is correlating the traditional threat intel coming in from commercial and open source datasets and mapping and correlating that with the attack surface intelligence. So what happens now is, if I had an asset, if this feed, the attack surface intelligence report, are basically talking about an asset which is relevant to me, then I can pivot from that. See what threat actor is targeting that asset. What are the other IOCs that can indicate that threat actor, the presence of that threat actor within my platform? What are the other vulnerabilities that are known to be exploited by that threat actor? What are other TTPs that it may actually be leveraging? And that way, I can proactively build a defense system. Similarly, you could have also started simply from an identity. You can go and get a sector as well. You can go and work on any of the vendors that you may have. So you can look for an identity object, which has the name of your vendor, which is present in your supply chain. Go ahead and right-click. Similarly, say Analyze Relations. If there are any present, it is going to correlate. And you can see that it did actually correlate with a specific threat actor as well. Now that is again very interesting and helpful because it allows you to understand your attack surface. You can see this vendor of yours is vulnerable. So it is very important that I make sure that I bolster my environment against those supply chain attacks as well. So it becomes really, really interesting. And this is where you keep building and protecting your environment proactively. So first, you start from a sector and go from there. What are the reports? What are the vulnerable assets? What are the threat actors, etc. that are targeting that sector? Because the same identities will have the sectors as well. For example, I have healthcare over here. I can do the same thing, wherein I can just zoom in, go ahead, analyze, and populate everything. Of course, I can select whatever I want. I can select based on threat actors or TTPs, etc. So I can populate that, and you can see it built another cluster. So you can keep pivoting to different actors, different objects within the platform using this. You can always go ahead and filter out the data that you don't want. If you want to see a specific kind of object, you will be able to filter on that node as well. But essentially, you can start from sectors, you can start from your different organizations, companies that are actually part of your supply chain, or you can even be on the lookout for your own assets within this particular feed and go from there. So it really is helpful and interesting to look at that data and be able to pivot from there. You can see all these filters as well, which you can simply turn on or off as well. This feature really helps you analyze, dive deep, understand your threat landscape, and see how you can actually protect against those threats specifically. Because you will also have something called a course of action over here, which are MITRE-defined mitigation techniques that you can actually leverage to protect against the specific attack patterns that are seen to be targeting your organization. This concludes our demo of the Cyware Intelligence Suite features. For more information, visit us at cyware.com to connect with one of our representatives.